Mr. Siminya.
Good morning, Chairperson. Commissioner Mabena, good morning. We beg leave to call Mr. Mukavela to the stand for his evidence today. With your permission, Chair.
Yes, you may.
Mr. Mukavela, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
If you may give us your full names.
My name is Andres Mukavela.
Do you have an objection in taking the oath?
None whatsoever.
Do you swear the evidence you will give will be the truth and nothing but the truth? And if you do, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
With the permission of the chair, you may take your seat. The witness is sworn in, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Siminya. Mr. Mnyandu.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Madam Commissioner Mabena. Mr. Mukavela, good morning to you.
Morning, sir.
You will have before you a file that is the witness bundle. May I please request that you turn to page 389, following the pagination on your top right-hand side.
I am there, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mukavela. Can I ask that, having looked at page 389, you now turn to page 396? There is a signature that appears there.
Indeed, Chair. I'm at 396.
Can you confirm whether you are familiar with the document and the signature that appears there?
I am familiar with the document and the signature is mine.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mukavela. Can we now go back to page 389 and take the chairperson through your testimony?
I am at page 389, Chair.
Kindly advise the chair where you are currently employed and the position that you hold.
I am currently employed as a Chief Fire Officer for the City of Johannesburg Emergency Management Services, effectively from the 1st of March 2024.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, in your introduction, you set out your experience or your journey in relation to fire emergency services. Can you just please advise the Chair of your history in relation to and your experience in relation to fire emergency services?
Chair, my career started in 2001, where I was recruited as a junior firefighter at the then Benoni Fire and Emergency Services, which now form part of Ekurhuleni Fire Services. In 2002, I was appointed as a firefighter at the City of Johannesburg Emergency Management Services. In 2005, I was then recruited back to Ekurhuleni as a platoon commander. In 2008, I was reappointed back by the City of Johannesburg Emergency Management Services as a station commander. Subsequently thereto, in 2011, I was appointed as a divisional chief, and in 2016, I was appointed a deputy director in operations. This then led to my appointed as a director of operations in 2002, where in 2003, I briefly acted as a chief of EMS before I was appointed to act as the acting head of Department Public Safety in the City of Johannesburg. And finally, I was then appointed as the chief of EMS, as I've already indicated, in March 2024. It's important that I also state, Chair, that all these positions were within the fire services operations. I therefore grew up within the ranks of the operations fire services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mukavere. In paragraph 2, particularly 2.1 and 2.2, you set out the circumstances under which you have come before the Commission. Can you just briefly highlight to the Chair as to what has brought you here?
Chair, on about the 19th of October 2024, a structural fire incident engulfed a building situated at 29 Hunt Street in Johannesburg, commonly known as the Poor Man's Building. Pursuant to the Commission's becoming aware of the incident on 21 October 2024, I was requested to furnish the Commission with the details surrounding the fire and including any other fire at a building which occurred subsequent to the fire at the Usindiso building. In this regard, the request outlines that the details required must include, amongst others, the following. One being the name of and total number of buildings engulfed by fire subsequent to the tragedy at the Usindiso building, the number of fatalities, if any, at each building, number of people injured in such fires, and the cause of the fire in each instance in the event it is known. Prior to setting out the facts relating to the various fire incidents in other buildings in the inner city, I deem it appropriate to give an overview of the living conditions at the Poor Man's Building, to the extent it is one of the buildings inspected by the Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Mukavere. With reference to paragraph 3.3, can you just highlight what the Commission's findings are in relation to that particular building pursuant to the inspection?
The Poor Man's Building is located at 29 Hunt Street, Johannesburg. It is owned, or it was owned by an individual, as we were advised, known as Mr. Stanley. And I understand or were informed that the owner has recently passed on. The building consists of 2 floors and approximately 100 units, which translates to approximately 200 beds. I am advised that on the 15th of August 2024, the Commission inspected the building and made the following observations insofar as it relates to the functions of EMS are concerned. One being that there was no fire safety equipment in the building. Two, being that the occupants had erected shacks inside the building that are partitioned by plastic roofs and wood, which poses an imminent fire risk. I am further advised that the Commission's findings is that the building is prima facie unfit for human habitation, in that, amongst other reasons, it poses a fire risk.
Thank you, Mr. Mukavela. Have you been able to locate any record of an inspection conducted for fire safety at the building?
I can confirm that EMS has no record of an inspection for fire safety having been conducted prior to the fire incident.
All right. Now, Mr. Mukavela, you go on at paragraph 4 to attach fire incident reports relating to 4 buildings, which we will deal with below in relation to the table you've set out. Those are annexed as AM1, AM2, AM3, and AM4. In giving information in the table that we will deal with shortly, you say it's important to first set out the priority levels that the EMS operates by in relation to what state they find a particular scene or persons at such a scene. Can you just highlight what those priority levels are and what they mean?
Indeed, Chair, I can confirm that there are 3 buildings that have been engulfed by fire since the Usindiso tragedy, as followed by the attachments and the table below. However, Chair, before going through the table, I would like to indicate or highlight the following in relation to the priority codes employed by EMS in relation to persons or victims found at emergency scenes. So what normally happens is when we respond and extinguish these fires, we always ensure that we assess the patients in line with their medical priorities. Priority level 1 being the most critical. Priority level 2, a patient who is injured but not to the extent that requires critical care. Priority 3, these are minor injuries. In most cases, these are minor burns. And priority level 4, these are victims who are normally found to have suffered fatal injuries.
Thank you, Mr. Mukavela. Can I please now request that you go through each of the buildings and highlight the information that is set out in each respect, starting with Delvers Close.
The first building, Chair, as indicated on the attachments, it's Delvers Close. The location of the building is at corner Delvers and Cornelia Street in Marshalltown. The date of the incident is the 15th of September 2023. Number of deceased victims, none. Number of injured victims, none. The cause of the fire is undetermined. Investigation revealed that there was a heap of grass behind the building and rubbish at the back of the building. The ownership or occupation of the building, the owner is unknown, and the current status of the building is illegally occupied. Building number 2...
Might I please interrupt you, Mr. Mukavela? Kindly explain to the chairperson as to whose responsibility it is to conduct an investigation in relation to the cause of fire.
So what happens is, as a fire service, when we respond to fire incidences, we conduct what we call a fire cause determination. And the reason why we conduct this fire cause determination, Chair, is that we want to know what causes these fires in order to ensure that our education programs and our preventative measures assist us in ensuring that we then come up with programs that are aimed at preventing these fires. So when we respond, we ensure that we conduct these investigations. However, Chair, I must indicate that on circumstances where we have fatalities, we then work together, or we then call upon SAPS or South African Police Services to come and conduct a forensic investigation. And in most cases, it's when there are fatalities. However, on our instances, we prefer and we try and ensure that on all fire incidences we do conduct this fire cause determination.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mukavere. You can then go on to the next building.
The second building, the name is unknown. The location is 256 Maritzburg and Anderson Street, City and Suburban. The date of the incident is the 21st of September 2023. The number of deceased victims, none. Number of injured victims, we had 1 priority 3 patient. The cause of the fire is undetermined. Ownership and occupation, it's unknown. The status, the building is partially illegally occupied, meaning part of the building is currently illegally occupied while the rest of the building it's vacant.
Just to interrupt you as well, in relation to this building, Mr. Mukavele, can I please ask that you turn to page 407?
Chair, I'm there.
I'm interested, Mr. Mukavele, in paragraph 3.3. The heading is bold, and so is the paragraph number. Kindly just read into the record what it states there.
Paragraph 3.3.
Indeed.
Firefighting and rescue procedure. 3 fire engines were supplying 4 attack lines with no constant water, as these vehicles had to go and refill water at the nearby fire station. A truck was constantly on scene assisting with breathing apparatus.
And now, before we deal with that issue, can I ask that you turn to page 408? The paragraph we are interested in there is 3.6. Likewise, I request that you kindly read into the record what paragraph 3.6 states.
3.6 are challenges, and bullet point number 1, the challenge is hydrants that were within the area. We were unable to connect due to some parts that are missing.
Now, Mr. Mukavere, you can take it from me that evidence has been laid in the commission that fire hydrants in the inner city are serviced. How would it happen that in relation to those that are close to this Maritzburg and Anderson Street building were not operational and of assistance to EMS?
So, Chair, from firefighting point of view, is that we have different fire stations located in different stations. At this point in time, we have 29. We are currently completing the new central fire station. Now, on each and every fire station within its jurisdictions, we will have firefighters doing what we call a pre-incident inspections or a risk profile. So when firefighters are not responding to fire incidences, they will then go around their area of operation or their jurisdiction to conduct a risk profile, which includes hydrant inspections. When we get to these fire hydrants, some of them, because of now there's rain, you'll find that there's sand that has closed them up because they are divided into two. We have pit hydrants and we've got standing hydrants. We'll then clean them up. We'll then put our own standpipe. We'll make sure that it's working and it's got a correct pressure. However, there are those that will find that they are vandalized. When they are vandalized, we'll then communicate with Joburg Water. They will then come and fix them. But the challenge that we are now experiencing is that you can get there today, you clean the hydrant, you fix it, but by the time you get a fire incident at night, when you get there, it has been vandalized. Either they've removed the head, and it's because the head, some of the head of these hydrants, we are using copper or aluminium to. It is constructed with steel and aluminium, so obviously it becomes vandalized. It also happens with the pit hydrants that by the time you get there, they've removed the covers, they've stolen the heads. So these are challenges that we are experiencing on a daily basis, to an extent that we have now taken a decision that the fire engines that we are using, with the current procurement process, we have increased the water tank capacity in order to ensure that when we get to these fires, we have consistent water supply. But far beyond that, we've also we are also procuring water tankers with an increased capacity of about 16,000 liters of water. These are efforts to ensure that when we get to fire incidences, we don't rely on fire hydrants anymore. Yes, of course, we'll need them. It's important that we continue to have them, but it's also important on our side that we are proactive and we are able to sustain our fire ground operations. So these are some of one of the challenges that we're experiencing, and the reason why it's captured, Chair, on the incident report is that, as I've indicated, that it's important that on each and every fire incident that we respond to, we highlight the challenges that we are experiencing when we are there, in order to ensure that we come up with proactive measures to ensure that when we respond to the next fire incident, we don't experience the same.
All right. Thank you very much for that response, Mr. Mukove. Can I please ask that you go back to page 392 and you just deal with the third and fourth buildings that are listed there?
Incident number 3 within the table. The name of the building, it's unknown. The address, it's 15 Jenny and Jules Street in Jeepistown. The date of the incident is the 25th of August 2024. In terms of the fatalities, we had 4 fatalities in that particular incident, and we had 4 injuries divided into different priorities. We had 1 priority 1, we had 2 priority 2 patients, and we had 1 priority 3 patient who were all transported to hospital. The cause of fire was found to be a suspected illegal electricity connection. The ownership is unknown, and the building is illegally occupied. Building number 4, it's Poorman Flat. This building is located at John Page and Hans in Jeepistown. The date of the incident is the 19th of October 2024. Injuries on scene, none. Transported to hospital, none. The cause of the fire is undetermined. The ownership is unknown, and the status of the building is currently illegally occupied.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mukabera, in paragraph 5 of your statement, you deal with some questions posed by the Commission during the course of January 2025. I'll highlight what the question is and you just tell us what the response is. The question is, how do we ensure that bylaws such as the fixing of fire escape routes, use of unsuitable and combustible building material is removed where those exist, and in particular in the bad buildings?
In addressing the question of adhering to bylaws in the illegally occupied buildings, as far as EMS is concerned, we, and if I can give a bit of a context, Chair, is that fire services within the city of Johannesburg has got different units which deals with different functions. We have a unit called operations, which is responsible for reacting to fire incidents. So when there's a fire, they will then jump into a fire engine and respond and extinguish the fire. However, far beyond this reactive unit, we've got a unit which is called a proactive services unit. This particular unit has got different individuals, and some of these individuals are fire inspectors. So on a daily basis, these are the individuals that are dealing with the issues of bylaws. So in this case, they are the ones who are conducting building inspections. So in responding to these questions, I will then look at the inspection of buildings, and I will also look at the challenges that we are currently faced with as EMS, especially when dealing with illegally occupied buildings. In dealing with this question, Chair, so building inspections are conducted by EMS fire safety personnel, and in this instance is that either when we arrive there, we'll find the owner of the building, or we'll find the occupants of the building. And the expectation is that they will then provide us with a plan, or a building plan, which is part of the requirements that is assisting us in looking at the regional design. Regional design will then look at the fire protection equipment, the emergency exit, and any other fire-related or fire protection requirements. In the instance where there is a supported plan, the inspection will be conducted according to that particular plan. Any contraventions discovered during such an inspection will be addressed by means of a letter or an instruction to comply, with a follow-up date which is handed up and explained to the owner or the occupier of the building, or a responsible personnel. Subsequent to the inspection, on the follow-up date indicated on the inspection report, the responsible inspector will then do a follow-up inspection. So how it normally happens is that when we get into this building and the owner is found and there's a plan, we will then write a detailed report which indicates what the contraventions are, and depending on the severity of these contraventions, the owner will then be requested to give us a plan, or will indicate that he will then, there are those that can be immediately rectified, there are those that will require a procurement from the side of the owner. The owner will then indicate within a certain time frames as to what is it that will be done. We will then work together with the owner in trying to correct what needs to be corrected. However, Chair, I must indicate that it happens in most circumstances that there is no rational design, there is no plan, and if there is no plan, we obviously then issue notices. In this case, if there is no plan, the first thing that we do is we advise the owner of the non-compliance with the EMS bylaws, and if there is no willingness to cooperate or to comply, an instruction to comply is issued to the owner, and in this case, it is reduced in writing. In most cases, we're using Section 98 of our EMS bylaws. Further to the instruction, which is in a form of a Section 56 notice, and depending on the severity of the contravention found, on the follow-up, the responsible inspector may then issue an instruction to cease operations and/or a closure of the building until such time that the contravention has been rectified. However, despite the position highlighted above, it must be noted that certain contraventions such as the blocking of an escape route, which is regarded as serious, sometimes we then require the owner or the occupier to rectify immediately. And I can indicate, Chair, that in most cases we have seen a situation where bricks were used to build or to close the escape routes. And in such circumstances where the owner is willing, they in front of us or in our presence do demolish and open it up. Where it is locked, they do cut the locks and open it up. And these are circumstances where they are willing to work with us. We then work with them in order to ensure that going forward, those emergency routes are opened. But it also happens in such circumstances that the owner cannot be found or the occupier refusing to open the escape routes. We then issue, obviously, a notice of closure. Or if it's a business, we then cease the operations up until such time that there is a corrections.
Now, Mr. Mukavere, looking at paragraphs 5.9 and 5.10, those serious instances where the contraventions of the bylaws are so grave that you have to, as you put it in your words, close the building. Highlight for the chair, as you do in paragraph 5.11, what is the prevailing challenge that you then face once you have to, in inverted commas, evacuate a building in order to make sure that its condition is improved? What is the challenge that is faced in that regard?
The challenge that we are currently faced with, Chair, is that especially on it is better when we are dealing with commercial buildings, either shops, places of entertainment. In most cases, we are able to locate the owners or either the tenants who are, in most cases, willing to work with us. However, in residential buildings, especially illegally occupied, it becomes difficult in a sense that closure of such buildings then requires immediate evacuation of the occupants. And where these closures are effected, we then obviously have to, or the city is then required to provide alternative accommodation, which is, in most cases, we have noted that there are challenges to our human settlement department, who are, in most cases, then required to provide a temporary accommodation to these occupants. However, be as it may, when we find, or when our observations and inspections indicate that there is a need for immediate evacuation and closure of these buildings, we do so, and then hand over these buildings and the non-compliance to our human settlement department for further handling.
Thank you, Mr. Mukavere. Now, if the notion or the understanding is that part of the challenge you face in inspecting bad buildings in the inner city is the fact that you are not allowed by the residents, whether they occupy it legally or illegally. If that is the understanding, what is your response to the question of whether inspections should not be conducted by your inspectors at EMS together with officials of the JMPD?
So, Chair, if I can also give a bit of a context on how we operate. So, from the history of fire services, we have always treated the owners of the buildings or the occupiers or the residents of the city of Johannesburg as our clients. So in the first instance, when we proceed to any building to conduct the inspection, the expectation is that of a cordial relationship between the inspector and the owner of the building. So how EMS has been structured, and I think even at this current point in time, is that inspectors operate independently on their own. So they will, in the morning, report in their offices, collect the documents, and then proceed to different inspectors individually or on their own to work with the clients. The challenge that we're experiencing now is that obviously when you arrive into a certain building as an inspector alone, you will then realize that this building it's illegally occupied when you are surrounded by a large number of people. Obviously, they will then begin to threaten you. It then becomes difficult. But what is more difficult is that for you as an inspector to then start enforcing or issue a notice of non-compliance is that you must have conducted an inspection first. So if you are blocked and you are not allowed to then conduct that inspection, it then becomes difficult. In these instances, we then obviously request our colleagues from JMPD to come and assist us. However, I must indicate that it is not sustainable in a sense that if you look at the capacity that is currently there and the number of buildings that the city is currently having, it becomes very difficult to have the colleagues from JMPD to accompany us on each and every building that we are going to. We've always been working as individuals, and it becomes difficult for us to actually have Metro Police officers as well to be behind us, because as I indicated, that the relationship between the inspector and the owner of the building it's expected to be cordial. We treat our residents as our clients. Only as a last result will want Metro Police to be there to then force or to then push for that inspection to happen. So indeed, in these buildings, we do have those challenges, and where necessarily, we do get our own colleagues from JMPD to come and assist us. However, it is a challenge looking at the capacity that they are currently having on their site and their mandate as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mukabela. Can we now go to page 395 of your statement? Professor Lauren Royston submitted an affidavit to the Commission and laid evidence. One of the recommendations made is that the city and its entities ought to take proactive steps to improve the living conditions and the knowledge of those persons that occupy these bad buildings. Now, you refer in paragraph 6.3 to daily community education programs. Can you just take the chairperson what those are and what they entail?
Indeed, Chair, as I indicated that we have different units within EMS, one being proactive services. So within proactive services, we have a unit that deals with building inspections, code application, and enforcement. But we also have a unit that deals with public relations. In that particular unit, we've got community educators. So their day-to-day duties is to go to the communities and conduct different programs that are related to preventative measures when there are emergencies. To this extent, Chair, if I may give a bit of a context, is that over the years we have realized and we have observed as a fire service that it is not sustainable to put resources and spend more money in employing firefighters who are aimed at responding and combating fires. Indeed, we still believe that there will be fires and will still be expected to respond. However, we have now adopted a proactive strategy to which we are now putting more resources and personnel in one, conducting inspections, two, conducting educational programs to capacitate our communities that in such a way that as much as we are trying to prevent these fires, it will happen that accidentally these fires happen. And the question is, what then when these fires happen? How do we mitigate further injuries? How do we ensure that the people who are involved in these fires are able to protect themselves and they can evacuate themselves up until the fire engine arrive on scene? So there are programs, one being, and these programs are now forming part of the performance contract of the fire chief. And it forms now part of the business plan and the service delivery plan of the city when it comes to Seva City, where we then look at different programs, one being the number of awareness campaigns that we conduct to our communities in the city, and this it's evaluated on a monthly basis and quarterly basis. So there are targets that are there that we're expected to reach on a monthly basis. We also have what is called the number of educational programs that we conduct on different schools, because indeed, Chair, we believe that if we start this education and we conduct these programs at a very early childhood, teach them how to ensure that they prevent these fires. But far beyond that, we also teach kids as to what is it that you can do should a fire erupt in your house. So there are targets on a monthly basis, and it forms part of the contract of the chief fire officer within the city of Johannesburg. We also have programs that are targeted at conducting educational programs and awareness campaigns specifically to teachers at schools in order to empower them to then impart this knowledge to the kids as well. So these are the three programs, where the third one, we normally conduct educational programs to malls or any area where there are gatherings, where people are gathering for entertainment. Even if it's football, we go there, we give them pamphlets, because we are trying to educate them on the dangers that the fire can cause should it erupt. So these are now our proactive programs, and they form part of the contract, starting from the fire chief and all the way to the firefighters level. To the extent that even the firefighters, we are now changing the mindset, because we are saying to them, it is not sustainable that we wait for fires to occur and we then respond to them. By the time you get there, the damage and the extent of damage, it's huge. But it's important that as firefighters, we go out there to our communities, we educate them on all things that they should do to avoid fires. However, we also teach them on all things that they should do should these fires occur. So these are programs that are already there. But far beyond these programs is that we looking at these buildings where we are experiencing these challenges, especially the illegal occupied buildings. We now have programs, especially in the inner city, where we are working together with our urban inspectors, health inspectors. We conduct joint operations, and we go together to these illegally occupied buildings, because we believe that when we approach them from the educational point of view, before the compliance point of view, it assists us, or it lays a foundation for inspectors. And we have seen it working a bit more when we approach them from that point of view, that we go there, we educate them first of these dangers, but we then indicate to them that after we've educated you, the inspectors will be coming, they will be inspecting this building, please work with them. And in other areas, we have seen it yielding or beginning to yield positive results.
Thank you, Mr. Mukavere. Finally, Dr. Solomon, in the course of his testimony and as highlighted in his statement, referred the Commission to previous incidents of fire within the city. In particular, there are two buildings. One was Caledonian Hall, and the other was Cape York, in respect of which there were two fires, one in 2013 and 2017. Now, there are two questions that arose: whether whether you are aware of these fires. That's one. Two, whether you have been able to track any information that relates to the fire incident reports and the like in respect of those fires.
Indeed, Chair, I can confirm that I'm aware of the fire incidences mentioned above. However, Chair, I have not been able to successfully, in my efforts to locate the respective incident reports. The challenge that we're experiencing, Chair, looking at the time and the period in which these fire incidences occurred, is that most of these reports we used to file them at our Metro Center building. That's where our fire safety offices were located, and our storeroom was located there. And due to the fact that the building is currently closed, we are unable to access these documents. To an extent, Chair, that I think learning from this experience, we have now, with all the building inspections that we are conducting now, and the fire incidences, we are now converting them to soft copies and obviously filing them differently in order to ensure that going forward, we don't rely on hard copies, but we do have some sort of soft copies that are available that we can supply.
Thank you, Mr. Mukavere. Chair, those are the questions we had for the witness.
Thank you, Mr. Myandu. Mr. Tobakale.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioner. Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Yes. I think where I wanted to start was in this issue of building inspections. Now, you mentioned that you would like to do those in a cordial manner, isn't it?
Correct.
Yes. Would you have a difficulty with a recommendation that in future the EMS could engage with community residents and organizations for purposes of being able to conduct those building inspections?
No, Chair, we definitely do not. In actual fact, we believe that working together with our communities is the way to go. As I've already indicated, in relation to our educational programs, we are beginning to see positive results when we work with our communities because they then understand that our intention is not to close them down, but is to assist and to work together with them.
Mm. So in relation to both inspections and those educational programs, you'd have no difficulty with a suggestion that EMS works with community organizations and residents committees?
Definitely not.
Okay. There was just one thing that I thought, you were asked a question earlier about whether there was an incident report for poor men, and if I recall correctly, your answer was that there wasn't one before the incident. Is that correct?
Indeed, Chair, we could not locate any, and as I indicated that previously when we conducted these inspections, we would then obviously file the hard copies at our current Metro Center building, which is closed. We are unable to access any of the reports that are there.
Yes, but is there one after the recent incident?
Yes, after the fire incident, there is a fire report that there was an investigation report that was conducted.
Yes, and is it the one that you had intended to attach to your statement? There's a, perhaps if I can.
So there are three reports. The one that is attached here, it's a report, it's a fire incident report that is generated in relation to what transpired during the fireground operations. And this is done either by the platoon commander or the firefighters. So it's an operational report. Then there's a fire investigation report, which its purpose is to determine the fire cause. So that's a separate report, which is done by an inspector.
Okay. No, so it was just something I wanted to flag now as I was listening to you, because I assumed, having read in paragraph 4.1 of your statement, it's at page 391. You see that? 4.1.
Correct.
Yes, there's incident reports marked AM 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then when you go down to the page, there's then a table with 4 buildings, and Poor Men appears as the last building on that document. You see that?
Correct, Chair?
Yes. So my assumption was AM4 was intended to be the Poor Men's report. But I think Mr. Mnyandu can resolve that issue in re-exam. So I just wanted to point that out.
So Chair, as I was indicating that the reports that are attached are fire incident reports, which are generated by the operational firefighters. So it talks about the fireground operations.
Yes.
However, after this report, we then get inspectors who are independent of the fireground operations,
Yes.
to conduct their own fire cause determination investigation. They also generate a separate report, which is not attached. So what is attached here, it's a fire incident report, not a fire cause determination report.
Yes, no, I understand that. So I think it's my mistake for not being clear. So when I go to AM4, the annexure, it doesn't relate to Poor Men. So I'm saying it's not a question for you now. I'm just saying Mr. Mnyandu perhaps will resolve it in re-exam. And then you mentioned the programs where EMS is now working together with urban and health inspectors. Do you recall that?
Correct.
Are you able to tell the Commission when that sort of joint inspection thing started?
We started, I think it's over a year now that we've been conducting these operations almost on a weekly basis. Chair, it's almost a year now.
And those would have been done in places including illegally occupied buildings?
Correct.
Okay. Chair, those are my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tobakale. Mr. Siminya.
Thank you, Chair. The default position relating to fire risk is that buildings of a particular description must have, as a matter of standard, fire equipment, fire safety equipment, right?
Correct, Chair.
In relation to bad buildings, as a matter of general course, the inspection reveals that the majority of these bad buildings don't comply.
That's correct.
You wouldn't resist that conclusion, would you?
Correct, Chair, I wouldn't resist.
And it is principally those type of buildings that are most exposed to these dangers to those who occupy them, right?
Correct, Chair.
And they are not routinely inspected, as a matter of fact. Am I right?
If you can please repeat, Chair.
They are not routinely inspected for fire risk compliance. Am I right?
Over the past 12 months, Chair, I can indicate that a quite number of buildings, especially in the inner city, has been indicated. However, I do generally accept that there are some that we have not routinely inspected due to challenges, one being the one that I've indicated where we sometimes struggle to access them. And obviously, Chair, the issue of capacity that we are currently experiencing. Chair, yes, that's how I can respond.
No, maybe there are reasons. All I'm saying is, as a matter of routine, they are not inspected. Do you
Correct.
resist that conclusion?
Correct, Chair.
Yeah. And principally those that were inspected, the observation is that they are not fire safety compliant. You can't resist that conclusion either, can you?
Well, Chair, with I just indicated that over the past year or so, having been to the inner city and conducting these inspections, what we are now doing is that we then look at the number of buildings that we have inspected, but far beyond looking at these numbers, we also look at what we call the percentage compliance of these buildings. And I can confirm, Chair, that around 67% of the buildings that we have now on our database, working together with them, we do found them to be compliant at the
Mr.
at the end.
Makavela, please, I'm talking about bad buildings that we inspected.
Correct.
Now, it doesn't help me to give me those stats. They don't apply to the bad buildings, am I right?
Correct.
Yeah. Now, how do we get this right? The exposure can remain extent despite the risk to life and limb. Am I
Correct.
right?
Correct.
How do we address that problem?
So, as I indicated, Chair, that when we get to these buildings, we conduct our inspections, and of course, where there are life and safety risks to these buildings, we do issue notices of closure.
No, Mr. Makavela, I must stop you. I'm not generalizing. I'm talking about buildings the commission went and inspected and found them non-compliant. So don't give me general answers.
Okay.
I'm saying, how do you correct that problem?
From fire services point of view, Chair, is that all these buildings should be closed, should be condemned, and all the occupants of these buildings must be evacuated.
No, I know what the law says, what the policies are, but there is not obedience to that, and that's what I'm trying to solicit from you. How do we make sure that these things, as a matter of law and policy, are adhered to?
So, one chair from fire services point of view is that when we conduct inspections on them, we close them. But far beyond that is that on instances where we are experiencing challenges, we then obviously get our Metro Police Department to then assist us to go and conduct these inspections. And indeed, where we find these contraventions, especially on these particular buildings, the illegally occupied buildings, we then close them and we then obviously hand them over for investigations where the owners cannot be found, and where there's a need for evacuation, we then hand them over to human settlement for the evacuation of the occupants.
You're still giving me general answers. I'm trying to be very particular. We went and inspected these things. All that generality does not apply. And I want to find, if you know, how we can address that problem.
Do you or do you not know, Mr. Mukaveli, how this problem can be addressed?
Well, Chair, from fire services point of view, how it can be addressed, it's obviously closing them and hand them over. But from where we're sitting is, if we were to have a sufficient accommodation to then, if we evacuate these occupants, we are able to accommodate them. I am of a view, Chair, and I believe that we will be able to resolve most of these challenges. So if we can have enough accommodation for the people who are illegally occupying them, we will be able to make progress.
With the constraints we know that we do not have alternative accommodation facilities, are we just to raise our hands in the air and despair?
Definitely not, Chair.
Please help me then. Is there a way in which we can mitigate the exposure? If you don't know, it's fine.
I'm aware, Chair, that we have been working together with our human settlement, and I am aware of an instance where we even, or JMPD even gave a site which was designed for accommodating vehicles that are impounded as an accommodation site or a temporary accommodation site that, should we experience this challenge, you are able to evacuate the occupiers to this particular site.
Mr. Makavela, we have had human settlements. They tell us they don't have those facilities. So don't go there. It is not your area. I'm merely asking, with the constraints present, can you think of a way of mitigating these risks? If you know, tell us. If you don't, it's fine.
No, in absentia of that, Chair, no.
Okay. Now, again, with government using adjectives like challenges, difficulties, etc., how are those to be addressed? It's not enough to say I have challenges, I have difficulties. The question is, how can those challenges and difficulties be addressed? Am I right?
Correct, Chair.
Okay. Those are the questions we have for the witness, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Siminya. Mr. Mnyandu?
Thank you, Chair, Madam Commissioner. Chair, we confirm we've got no questions in re-examination of the witness. I also do confirm that we have been able to resolve the query raised by my learned friend, Mr. Tubachali. There are indeed 4 different reports attached to the statements
Yes.
as set out in the table. They just do not follow the order in which they are set out in the table.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mnyandu.
Chair, with your leave, might we request to enter Mr. Mukavele's statement into the record as Exhibit COJ 8?
Yes. The statement of Mr. Andres Mukavele is entered as Exhibit COJ8 in the record.
We are indebted, Chair.
Well, maybe Mr. Nyandu, you may want the annexures also to have point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4.
Chair, we kindly beg leave to have the annexures to the report admitted into the record as COJ 1,
1 to 4.
COJ 8.1 to 8.4 respectively.
So admitted.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, it goes that far for the formal hearings for the day. We are to adjourn, with your permission, to Monday next week.
Yes. Mr. Mukavele, thank you very much for having come before this commission to give your evidence. You are now excused as a witness.
Thank you, Chair.
These proceedings are adjourned until Monday at 10 o'clock.